Hey, hello! How are you everyone today? I'm going to explain a novel from the Royal Road website. Today's novel is Undead Paladin. It's an isekai novel, and those who like fantasy, game light, stories of transformed worlds will enjoy it. Today, I'll explain chapters 1 to 3 of this novel, so let's get started. Chapter 1. Rolling with the Punches. Dying shouldn't take so long. I was laying there with an elephant on my chest, staring at the fluorescent lights, and all I can think about is that it's taking too long. Something wet lapped against my hand, and I heard Debbie's screams from across the store, but still hadn't kicked the bucket. I couldn't move my head, the lights burned my eyes, while the leftovers of my third energy drink of the morning stained my hand. Don't know why that was bugging me, but it was. Some poor bastards were first gonna have to lift my morbidly obese corpse off the ground, then a coroner would have to wash the syrup off my hand. Maybe it was the coroner who did it. Oh, finally, the lights darkened and my vision started to fade as I passed on. Welcome to the system. You have died. Soul is unbound. Soul has been claimed. Excuse me? Claimed? Too late, darkness filled my being, the words erased before I could figure them out. Fiery cold pain filled every crevice, making light of the heart attack that had just sent me to the next life. Hello? The word rippled across my consciousness like a rock dropped in a frozen pond. I would have screamed if I had lungs as I was torn asunder. My apologies, I have limited myself. The voice spoke with less intensity. Now, instead of ripping apart, it merely felt like being electrocuted. This will take a few moments. I know you're likely experiencing some confusion, and that is anticipated. Your world was experiencing an event known as the system, and our guiding artificial intelligence to integration and regulation had started building a bridge to your world when you died. If you had died a minute earlier, your soul, the essence of who you are, would have slid off into the dark ether and slowly dissolved back into the universe to be repurposed. If you had lived a minute longer, you could have accessed one of the soul capture planes. He had a British accent, I decided, and the moment I decided it, his voice became British. I let his voice continue to electrocute me as I thought about what that meant. If my decisions made things happen, shaped the world I was currently experiencing? I let the thought trail away as the British speaker brought my attention back to him. Due to a copyright issue, we now call these system cataclysm events rather than apocalypse. I digress. As I was saying, your soul has been claimed. By who? The thought word tore free of me and I felt lesser for it, as if part of myself had been expended to give voice to the thoughts. That is impressive. I wouldn't keep doing it though. Your soul is weak. You have no feats to reinforce it. As I was saying, your soul was claimed by a rather clever piece of spellcraft blessed by an administrator. You'd call them a god, small g. Then it didn't deploy properly, and now your soul is being dragged across the galaxy. It happens, even to a prodigy. The creature paused again, and I waited to see if they were going to continue speaking or wanted me to speak, which I wasn't going to do since having my soul ripped apart didn't sound great and hadn't felt fantastic when I'd done it already earlier. You have a choice now. Do you want to go across the galaxy and be claimed? The question was interesting since I think the implication was if I didn't accept, I'd be left to drift in an endless icy abyss until my soul unraveled and I experienced true unmaking, which sounded pretty terrible. The other hand was going to someplace where my soul was claimed. Well, the voice said, stringing the word out for uncomfortable seconds. It was like it had forgotten that it had just said not to talk. Claim. I tried to make it shorter to spare myself the agony of burning through my own soul to speak, but it didn't help. What did I tell you about speaking? Claimed you are then. Have a good time over there. They're experiencing the beginning of their own cataclysmic event. The voice had become malicious as it spoke, a cruelty in it that was colder than anything I'd experienced so far. Its presence swelled till I felt smothered, crushed, and drowned all at once. The anger came, that burning knot that had rested in my gut for so many years, a smoldering heat that hadn't gone anywhere with death. I reached out, willed myself to rake myself across that omnipresent presence, and a screech filled the air. I woke with a gasp, lungs burning as I looked around the sterile white room. Bright white lights burned at my eyes, and for a moment I thought I was still laying on the ground at work, dying from a heart attack. Then I saw the woman staring at me. She definitely wasn't from work. Dressed head to toe in black robes that were tight around the waist and hips, flared around black leather boots that shone with polish. White blonde hair was tied into a tight braid that fell down and over a shoulder. Onyx gems glinted in the light, woven into the braid. Her pale skin had a blue tint to it, and her ears were slightly elongated, while her eyes were liquid mercury with cat pupils slit long and narrow. She smiled and revealed long fanged teeth that threatened to pierce her ruby-red lips as she stepped forward toward me. "It's alive." Her voice was a throaty purr as a long, delicate finger traced itself up and across my bare chest. Wait a minute, where the hell were my clothes? Whose body was this? As I stared down at the flesh I was somehow attached to, I wondered how that had happened. Where there had previously been a prodigious amount of doughy flesh was now sculpted muscle. Pecs that would rival any bodybuilder, at least 8 abs that were clearly defined, with thighs that looked like they had once been tree trunks. And, oh, that was unfortunate. "Who are you?" I asked, my words slightly slurred as I looked up at the woman. She jerked back like I had slapped her, eyes widening until they had a mostly normal pupil size. "You can talk?" she stammered as she blinked rapidly at me. "I can. Am I not supposed to?" "You're supposed to be a construct. What went wrong?" Her last words trailed off as she started to look around herself, already forgetting I was there. I looked around more and realized it was slight pressure on my wrist and ankles were restraints, comfortable and padded, but still restraints. "I'm positive we didn't go over safe words, but I'm going to have to say red light," I joked. Her head jerked back up as she stared at me blankly, completely confused. That was an attempt to relieve the tension in the room with humor. "Could you untie me, please?" "Oh, will you try to kill me?" the strange woman asked. "Should I?" "No," she replied instantly. She reached over with her long fingers and quickly unstrapped the restraints, and I stepped off the small platform I'd been positioned on. Cold marble greeted my bare feet, but the feeling was muted, as if from a long distance away. Without thought, I looked over my hands at the long, strong fingers that were so different than mine had been. This is trippy. I think I know where it went wrong. It was supposed to be reaching into and gathering of a collection of broken souls from the void, the space between. But it looks like you hadn't faded away yet, she explained, and I still had no idea what she was talking about. The last thing that had happened was me laying there staring at the fluorescent lights, and then there was something missing. It was like running a tongue over a missing tooth, but for my memories, something was missing, and that sent a deep spike of horror through me. "Your soul is frayed." Her words jerked me out of my own thought process and turned toward her, but she suddenly looked behind herself and spat a foreign curse I didn't understand. "We have to leave. Our presence has been detected." She still hadn't told me her name as she turned and started to confidently stride away from the stand I'd been pressed against and toward a barred door of onyx wood with golden trim. "Clothes?" I asked as I started to walk after her. There was nowhere else I could go, the strange woman my only contact. "There, what was your class in your last life? I have some basic weapons and armor, but I was planning on sculpting you directly." "Class?" "Yes, your class." She had stopped and turned, giving me a look that implied I was missing a few brain cells. "Unintegrated world, but how? This means you've never had the system connect to you. We're in a shielded room. Once we leave, you'll be connected. It'll be disorientating and my ward's broke, which means at least constructs are on their way. Still don't know what that means. You'll find out soon enough. Here's some clothes, armor, and weapons. Take your pick of what you want." She pointed toward a nook by the door that was filled with piles of clothes and metal. A pair of boots sat next to it all. "What's your name?" I asked as I pulled apart the clothes and looked them over. It was like someone had an idea of medieval clothes and it tried to make them with modern comforts. A long tunic of silver-white cloth that reached my mid-thigh, slick under my fingers but thick and comfortable. Pants that were tighter than I was used to, but with flex and bend in them like nylon. There was a wide, broad belt of soft black leather that kept the tunic from billowing out. "Nylaris of House Grimm," the woman said as she leaned her head around the corner. "House Grimm? I hope I'm missing something in translation." "We are a proud necromantic house," Nylaris responded instantly. "Necromancy? Raising the dead?" I asked slowly as I turned to her, pants only halfway up my thick thighs. "How did women put these on?" "What did you think you are? You're a soul transplanted into a grafted corpse. I took the best pieces of half a dozen fallen warriors to make you," Nylaris said calmly. "You went over 6 corpses and this was the best you can do?" I waved a hand downward and she wrinkled her nose in disgust and didn't deign to reply. "Why should I be going with you?" I asked as I managed to get the pants all the way up.
Chapter 2. Escape. Theodore Massey. Race, Undead. Soul. Strength, 25. Endurance, 19. Speed, 12. Intelligence, 9. Perception, 8. Vitality, 0. Mana, 0. Soul, 49. That one of my lowest stats was intelligence was disheartening. Why my soul stat was so high while also being my race was concerning. More concerning was the next set of messages that scrolled down through my vision. Soul damage detected. Soul unraveling in process. That was not great. I swallowed hard at those words and looked up to see Nylaris had already walked 40 feet away, her staff's light illuminating a path forward in the darkening halls. "Hey, what's soul unraveling?" I called after her as I started jogging to catch up. The armor didn't jangle or clash. The only sound down the hall was the muted sound of my feet hitting the tile. Even that was quieter than it should have been, and I wondered if this obviously magical world had started me off with some magical armor. Unraveling? Soul damage can be fixed with either a powerful priest channeling a miracle or direct intervention by a god, Nylaris said without stopping. Her eyes swept back and forth while I tried to process what she had just said. God? Small g or big G? Multiple of them too? "I'm going to let you know, we don't have gods on my planet. Is it hard to find one?" It was a struggle to force the words out from my dry mouth. "The majority of your body is from a fallen paladin. It should be easy enough to attract the attention of a god," Nylaris said as she led us through the halls. In the distance, I could hear the sounds of scuttling feet, loud and echoing. "The majority?" I asked, even as I tried to remember my brief look down at myself. There had been neat, if thick, black stitching around multiple limbs, but I had been distracted by it not being my body that I had woken up in. Torso, right arm, right leg, not the foot, but the right leg till the ankle, she said matter-of-factly as I nearly stumbled. "What happened to him?" I couldn't stop myself from asking. "Later, we're about to be attacked. Just don't hit me with that axe," Nylaris said. I looked around to see what she was talking about and found my breath catching in my lungs as golden white light speared through the gloomy halls like a spear. A floating, fat, cherubic creature came toward us with white wings that thundered with every beat. Tanned skin was bared to the world aside from a toga of virgin white. A golden spear was clasped in a chubby fist, while its bald head had a floating bronze halo over its head. "Is that a baby?" "It's a divine construct. They guard temples," Nylaris said as she lifted her staff and pointed it at the floating creature. It opened its mouth and a trumpet blared forth in a deafening brassy blast. Nylaris' staff sent a bolt of fire from its tip, splashing across the angel in an explosion of flame. There was no backblast of heat, rather an icy wind swept over me,
and even with my muted senses, I could tell it had been frigid. The angelic screeching had stopped the moment Nylaris had fired her ice fire blast, but it still kept coming forward. Just now, mist flowed from it as its baby face scrunched into a snarl of rage. It was almost comical if it wasn't for that sharp golden point heading toward my chest. Long white wings snapped back and forth as it continued to float toward us, but I found myself moving on instinct. I stepped forward without hesitation, axe coming up and slicing down in a silvery sheen. Cherubic Guardian, Level 6, Experience gained, Enmity earned. Golden motes of light flowed out of the angelic being until the entirety of its body dissolved in a shower of light and flowed elsewhere. "That was easy," I said, and kicked myself instantly. The heavy sigh from Nylaris was a clear sign I'd just jinxed us. I heard it when I said it. "You said this was a temple? For like a god?" I tried to change the subject. "Where else do you get a paladin corpse?" Nylaris asked. I didn't have a good response to that as we left the forearm-length spear on the ground and continued to run. It was surprising how easy it was to move, my body not struggling at all where before anything more strenuous than a fast walk would have me drenched in sweat and panting within moments. I ran in full plate without hesitation, arms pumping as I followed her in the twisted labyrinth of halls. It was only as we made our third turn that I had heard skittering sounds, and the cherub had been floating silently in the air. "There's more of them coming," I told her, the hairs on the back of my new neck rising as I spun. It was the most athletic thing I had ever done, propelled by muscle memory that wasn't my own, as the axe's double-bladed head tore into a creature. Burning blood spilled across my armor and the floor. Steam rose up as scalding pain assaulted me. Lizard eyes looked at me with ruby red hate as fangs opened and closed inches from my eyes. Claws scraped weakly at my armor as it continued to grash its teeth before it finally slid to the ground and its ruby eyes glazed over in death. Divine Beast, Level 5, Experience gained, Enmity gained. Whose enmity am I gaining? The burning from the blood had ended with the creature's passing, and Nylaris grabbed my wrist, pulling me further along. Hathan, he's the guardian of the space in between, and where bodies are held before internment. If you've paid enough and had enough deeds to enjoy his protection, Nylaris said as we rounded another corner and doors appeared before us. Piles of bones were heaped in the corner, and a trio of skeletons in clean steel armor continued to hack away at more of the lizard-like divine beasts that were attempting to get through the door. "They're with me," Nylaris said, as power gathered around her staff and another lance of icy fire pierced through the crowds and slammed into the hot-blooded lizards. They grew slow, their motions lethargic, and the skeletons took advantage of the weakening lizards. They weren't warriors. There was no beauty to their motions. The skeletons were butchers. They sacrificed and allowed themselves to be destroyed to land even a single blow, and within moments all three of the remaining armored skeletons were broken and in pieces, but the two remaining lizards were dead. We raced out through the broken-down doors, wood and ivory nothing more than splinters as we ran into the twilight. Violet-red light filled the horizon. Black clouds covered the horizon. Winds whipped across us, and I stopped in my tracks as I looked down at the wooden planks I was standing on. Or rather, I looked down past the planks and into the awning void to either side of the boards. The ground was far away, partially obscured by passing clouds. Further ahead, a ship sat, bobbing on currents of air. I didn't know anything about old ships besides some were wooden, but this thing looked sleek. It was curved like a bow and had 3 masts with triangular black sails that hung limp. 6 more of the armored skeletons stood in front of the ship, but there were piles of bone that showed there had been others there. 7 other dead lizards lay in piles of torn flesh, but now the route forward was clear. Nylaris took off running hard, her long legs eating up the ground. I followed as fast as I could, but the tall woman was superhumanly quick, and I lagged behind in moments. Nylaris flew by her skeleton guards, running up a ramp onto the ship. She barked out something in a strange language, her voice whispery and raspy as something stirred on the deck. I hit the rampart, the board bucked under my feet and nearly threw me, and I looked down into the gap of space that would lead me to fall for a very long time. "Hurry, the rest of the temple is awakening," Nylaris barked, and I finished crossing the ramp and hopped over the side. I got a clean look at what Nylaris had been talking to and nearly went back the way I had come. A serpent of twisting black winds sat coiled around the back of the ship. Its head tracked me, no eyes to its triangular head, as a faint breeze rolled through the joints of my armor. "Her name is Quirixilus, a wind elemental from the far north," Nylaris said. Behind me, the remnant of the skeleton guard marched across the gangway and pulled it up behind them. Quirixilus turned away from me and toward the sails, opened her jaws, and a tongue flickered out. Strong winds filled the sails, and the ship surged beneath us, nearly sending me to the planks as the floating ship flew away from the island. All right, that's all done. I have muscle memory that allows me to slaughter angels and divine beasts, which makes me think we might be the bad guys. Also, this body is a stolen paladin, which, if I remember correctly, is a sworn warrior to a god. I babbled on without thought, as my brain tried to connect with everything that had happened over the last 30 minutes. "I'll explain, but let us get away from the island before more powerful guardians stir," Nylaris promised. I shut up and looked back toward the rapidly shrinking floating island as the ship flew across the sky. "What is that?" I asked, as from the heart of the—
Chapter 3. Clarifying Confusion. "Hold on to something," Nylaris screamed, as she did something with the steering wheel and suddenly the ship was diving. My feet came off the deck and I had a half-second to process that I had escaped permanent death by heart attack to have permanent death by splattering. New instincts pushed me, and my borrowed axe slammed into decking, burrowing deep into the wood and anchoring tight. Air screamed over in a rush of noise that deafened the world while I looked up towards where Nylaris stood, long fingers clenched around the wheel and a manic grin on her face. I think she's enjoying this. Aren't necromancers supposed to be creepy basement dwellers? Beyond the back of the boat, that has a name but I couldn't remember it, the sun rose in a blossom of flame. Night was banished as clouds disappeared in a puff as fire raced toward us. Nylaris' staff, which was firmly wedged against planking and standing on its own, flared crimson red and pulsed twice before something came tearing out of it. How the massive scarlet-skinned monstrosity had been able to fold itself into the staff was magic, that was obvious. Why Nylaris had a demon tucked into her staff, I didn't think I wanted to know. And it was a demon. Nothing else made sense as it floated in the air between us and the descending firestorm. Tall, bulky, red skin, goat horns, and a sense of pure evil. Couldn't see its eyes, but I was sure they'd be yellow. I would also kiss the demon with all the vigor in my body as it lifted a 10-foot-long hand and made the stop gesture to the wall of divine flame. Fire slammed into a wall, balling up and racing back the way it came as the demon laughed, the sounds of 1,000 tortured souls. In the distance, a cry of rage filled the world and something large moved, a hurricane of displaced air that pushed our ship, nearly causing us to flip as Nylaris cursed and fought with the wheel while the wind serpent desperately whipped around the masts. The ship straightened and I got a good look of the floating island, with the Temple of Hathon on it and a gigantic dragon that was floating above it. Golden chains lashed to its 4 legs and formed a collar around its grand throat. But even with those chains, the sense of death hanging over our heads didn't disappear. "That was rather expensive," Nylaris complained as she looked at the floating demon that was now mocking the chained dragon. "We're alive?" I asked as I patted myself. All the cold steel was there, so I guess the rest of me was within the suit.
For now. I think that's going to cause problems in the future, Nalaris said with a sigh as she adjusted the wheel of the ship. Do I want to know? That wasn't my demon to let loose. I, borrowed him. The way Nalaris said it was the same way Mikey Granger had told me he had borrowed my scooter when we were 10. You stole a demon? Permanently borrowed, Nalaris rebutted, but I noticed she had a small smile on her ruby red lips as she turned the ship to the distance. Quest generated. Slay Randall the Demon. Sponsored by Adventurers Guild. Reward 50,000 experience. Quest generated. Capture Randall the Demon. Sponsored by Demon Tamers Guild. Reward 20,000 experience. Quest generated. Find the dirty thief who stole Randall's prison. Sponsored by Demon Tamers Guild. Reward 10,000 experience. Quest generated. Slay the heretics of Hothen. Sponsored by Hothen's Temple. Reward eternal salvation. 5,000 experience. One after another, the alerts rolled through my vision, and I forced them away with a thought. I was adjusting to the weird world a bit too quickly, my brain not melting out of my ears and leaving me a babbling idiot. I was pretty chill most of the time, but getting isekai to a whole new world where a hot necromancer is telling me she needs me to save the world? Yeah, I should be a drooling mess in a corner on my way to the funny farm. What's wrong with me? I regretted the words as soon as I said them. The filter between brain and mouth not working the way it should. You're supposed to be a broken soul, not a mouthy one. That's rude, but why aren't I freaking out? You know, because of everything? I asked her as I waved a hand at the entire world I had been dragged into. Soul damage can have many effects. Memory loss, changes to behavior, mood swings, headaches, organ failure. Got it. Soul damage is making me weird. How are we going to stop the soul damage? And why did you need me again? I didn't need you. I needed a soul to power the paladin's body. Nothing else would have worked. We're heading towards a temple with a priest who will have more knowledge about this than me. I'm not exactly an expert in soul damage. Grave robbing only. Got it. I gave her a sarcastic thumbs up. Her frown at me was rewarding, and I decided then and there that irritating her was my newest favorite thing to do. I am a well-established necromancer. I haven't had to grave rob since I was a preteen. I have minions for that, Nalaris said, rolling her eyes as she did something with the wheel before walking away and toward me. I wish I was a better man and my eyes didn't fall to her hips and the rolling gait she had, but I wasn't. Shame on me. Why the paladin's body? She had been talking over and over about a paladin's corpse and needing it specifically, and it was sticking in my mind like a burr. She had plans, obviously, and I needed to know how they applied to me. The corpse is the body of a paladin who served Gramo. There is a significant amount of Gramo's divinity still lingering in it. That still doesn't explain anything, I said. Nalaris blinked slowly twice and pursed her lips, narrowed her eyes suspiciously, and shook her head back and forth a bit. This will go faster if you don't interrupt. Got it. You're interrupting. Which, fair. I kept my mouth shut as Nalaris waited for me to say anything, and when I didn't, she nodded along. The problem is thus. A long time ago, our system administrator went out for the equivalent of alchemical ingredients at the corner store and never came back, which is a problem since the administrator's office would have all the tools needed to find out exactly what it is that's leaking into our world and is gnawing at its bones. I kept my mouth shut and let her stare at me with those liquid silver eyes. When I kept my mouth shut, she kept talking. There is a quest that is generated by the system itself to become the administrator. I mean to activate the quest markers to claim the quest. The first of the hidden markers that I found is inside the tomb of the Archlich, contained by the 3 necromantic families. I was physically biting my lip to stop myself from asking questions. The Archlich was slain and entombed by a squad of paladins sworn to Gramo, and it was his priests that sealed the tomb. To enter the tomb, you need Gramo's divinity on your person. Divinity that's inside of this body. You were doing so good, too, Nalaris groaned and shook her head in mock defeat. You are the key to enter the tomb, which has assuredly become a dungeon. We run the dungeon, claim the reward, and I get the first of 3 hidden objectives to start the quest to become the next system administrator. I had a bunch of questions, really too many to field at the moment, but I had to prioritize. That sounds like a long-term plan. What's the plan for right now? My soul is unraveling. You have a bounty on your head. There's a demon, a dragon, and a god all pissed off at you, and by extension me. Also, what's up with these stats? What can I do with experience? How does enmity work? Nalaris raised a hand and cut me off in midstream. Experience is currency. What you earned can be generated into a stick, like this. Nalaris raised her hand and a stick of crystal appeared between her hands. Inside of the many-faceted jewel, there was a riot of every color I had ever seen or heard of, all of them dancing together, drawing me in deeper and deeper. Nalaris's fingers snapped in front of my face, and I jerked out of whatever trance the stick of experience had put me under. I blinked and went to rub at my face, but the helmet was still there, so I pulled it off and set it by my feet. I forgot you haven't classed yet. You need experience to level up once you have your class. For right now, all the experience you earned has been banked and saved for you till you find the hidden deeds necessary to start your class quest. Nalaris held up a hand before I had a chance to even try to say anything. The hidden deeds are fairly well known, but we should first talk to a priest before we start unlocking them. They'll have a better idea of what to shoot for to help your situation. Most of the deeds are pretty simple. It only gets complicated when you get to class upgrades or switches, then the deeds can get a bit specific. Nalaris said the last part with a wary tone in her voice. There's a temple to the Dark Mother not far from here. She'll shield us from the bounties, and her priests will help you with your soul problem. For now, just try not to die while we fly there. Excuse me? Are we in danger? More danger? I had to clarify that last part since I hadn't been in danger since I'd met her a few hours ago. The trip there can be a bit rough. We've left the protected area of Hothan's temple and summoned a demon on the outskirts of it. You, not we, don't drag me into the demon summoning, I muttered as I shook my head. Regardless, a demon of Randall's power will have attracted more demonic presences and other monsters in general to the region. Many of those will have the ability to fly. Nalaris stopped as she must have seen something that was passing as horror on my face. They'll be weak. Anything strong will be scared by Randall and the Temple Guardian. These will be the bottom feeders, hoping to eat the scraps. Strong is the first set of temple constructs we fought, maybe a bit more. Nalaris trailed off as she looked across the dark sky around us. We were traversing between a pair of suspiciously round clouds that had been rapidly approaching. I jinxed it. I freely admit it. This time it's my fault. Grab the helmet and stick close to the skeleton.
And with that, this video ends. I hope you liked the video. If you liked it, please like it. And yes, the second part of this will come in a few days, so wait for it. So, goodbye for today.